Page 14. Page 14, the positive side of character. Everybody got their books tonight? Okay. Now, the positive side of character, of course, the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is all about positive character education. We want to get the negative out and keep the positive and build on that positive. In fact, just a brief review of what we went over last week. On page 13, of course, what it all boils down to is you have a moral obligation to respect the possessions of others and not destroy them. Having morals is an important way to define your character. Moral values set boundaries that help you to demonstrate appropriate behavior towards others. In other words, when a person has moral values, he tries to distinguish between right and wrong and makes choices that are respectful and thoughtful of others according to his ability. And remember, on page 8, remember it's a line, it's a defining line, these rules, these moral rules, it's a defining line that separates right from wrong. And there's a picture on there with the line, right and wrong, as a great reminder for you. Let's go ahead and turn to page 14. The positive side of character. Your character is made up of many different qualities. They are called character traits. Character traits can be either positive or negative based upon your values, what you've been taught, your choices, and your experiences. So let's look at that for just a moment. These character traits, they're traits that you have. They're traits that, unlike the traits that you get from the DNA within you, from your parents and grandparents and so forth, but these are character traits that you can actually change. They can be either positive or negative. Most people have some positive and negative both. What we are trying to do with the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is not be those some people. We want to be those that have positive character all the time. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of study to get there, but you can do it. Then, they can be either positive or negative based upon your values. And we talked about values earlier too. And what we've been taught, the things we've been taught by others, by our parents, by teachers, by friends, your choices and your experiences. Now remember, experience is not the best teacher. That's like the school of hard knocks. We can learn from others' mistakes. And that's how the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program teaches us. We can see and look at the mistakes of others and the mistakes that we've made also, and build upon those things, knowing we don't want to go back there again. So the key to having moral character is to develop positive character traits. Let's turn over to page, going forward just a little bit, but the glossary, it's in the back of the book. But to develop, on page 169 in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Character Unit, means to expand or enlarge, to aid in the growth of. So see, to aid in the growth of, it takes some effort. Strengthen, to improve the quality of and refine. So the key to having this, back to page 14, the key to having moral character is to develop positive character traits. And when you demonstrate these traits on a consistent basis, consistent all the time, you will be known as a person of integrity. People who have moral character, which they show by their actions and attitude that they care about themselves and others. So they show by their actions and their attitude that they care about themselves and others. Become familiar with these words that describe moral character traits and strive to develop them within yourself. And remember, to develop is to aid in the growth of. Now let's go ahead and make sure we're on track here and look back to page LP1F. LP1F. So we'll look at at procedure number 4. And this is just making sure we're where we're supposed to be. It says, explain to students another critical aspect where morals must be applied is in regards to the possessions and properties of others, because of the value people place on their possessions. Then it says to have students read the sections, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and we've been through these on pages 10 and 12, and also here's something else to think about. On pages 12 to 13, explain to them that when we behave morally towards the possessions of others by respecting their right of ownership, it shows respect and willingness to live peaceably with them, and tell them that having moral values towards people and their possessions is a critical factor of demonstrating positive character traits that will lead to peaceful relations. So here we are now in procedure number 5. So we've done all those things. In number 5, it says to explain to students that factual knowledge and experience, coupled with the values one possesses, aid in producing both negative and positive character traits that will influence one's behavior. Of course, it says to choose students to read the sections entitled The Positive Side of Character and What is a Negative Character, which we're going over those things right now, found on pages 14 through 16 and through 19 and 20 of the handbooks. Just looking on it says compare and contrast the advantages and disadvantages between positive and negative qualities of character. For example, honest versus dishonest, responsible versus irresponsible. Of course, what we're going through right now is going to be the positive traits. A little bit later, you'll be going through the negative traits to compare. And to explain to students that most people have both negative and positive character traits. Okay, so we'll continue on with the rest of that a little bit later, but let's get started on these positive traits. Now, last week, for those of you that were here, we talked about being educated. Just quickly reviewing it. Educated is getting all the facts, and remember this word facts. That's very important. It doesn't mean to just listen to whatever you're being told. You've got to research it to get the facts. You know, a lot of people have opinions that they consider are facts, but we want the solid facts. Making sure they are correct before making a decision. So that's not something you do just right away, unless you have a lot of knowledge about whatever's being spoken about and you know many facts according to whatever it is. But you got to make sure they're correct before making a decision. And that goes back to also not making snap judgments, not jumping to conclusions, which we'll be going over more in some other books as we go forward. And, of course, it gives the example that your friends offer you some glue to sniff, and you'd already been researching it and know how damaging that can be to your brain. You tell them no and warn them of the dangers of well. So you're correcting them. But, of course, doing it kindly. You don't have to throw anything at them or anything like that, Being respectful. To value others as important as yourself. Now, I've heard it said before that, well, I don't value myself. I don't think much of myself. Well, there's something lacking there. They haven't learned that they have value. They haven't learned that that all people have value, and they don't have any self-respect. And that's the kind of thing that would come from somebody that doesn't have any self-respect, is saying something like, well, they're not valuable, they're not important, and so forth. But to value others as important as yourself, and to allow that to show through your actions and attitudes. It gives an example. Your principal directs you to go to class, and even though you had a permission slip to go to the nurse's station, you try to explain, but he says no back talk. You say, respectfully, of course, well, yes, sir, and you follow his directions anyway. So at first look, that might not seem fair. He had a permission slip, right, to go to the nurse's office. But what we have to understand is that there's different levels of authority, too. The principal of the school is the authority over the teacher that probably gave him the nurse's. We got to think about it a little bit. It's a kind of condensed example. But the principal is the authority over the school. So he's the authority over the teacher. He's the authority, most likely, over the nurse's office, and definitely the authority over the young man in the hallway or the or the young lady, whichever one. So he has the authority where he can actually take that permission away, where the permission slip is no longer valid. And he's saying no back talk. He's not explaining the situation to the boy. He's just merely saying, hey, no back talk. You need to go back to your class, and you follow his directions. Then later you might find out that there was something going on which he was not privy to tell you about at the moment. Possibly there was a student in the nurse's office that got sick and there was a mess on hand or something. So many things could have taken place to where it wasn't actually viable for him to go to the nurse's office at the time, and the principal didn't need to explain all that to the young man or to the student. So it wouldn't have been, it could have been something that didn't need to be shared with everybody at the time. So once again, you know who your authority is. Even though you have a permission slip or you think you're in the right, when you're told by the authority to do something, you go ahead and do it, and you do it respectfully. You can always find out later possibly what was going on, in a respectful manner, of course. Okay, let's look at patient. Now, different dictionaries describe this in a different way, but here in the Peaceful Solution, it gives you a short definition there that says demonstrating self-control and remaining calm through setbacks. Demonstrating self-control and remaining calm through setbacks. So let's take a look at what else it says. It says being patient means not complaining, especially when you have the most to complain about. For example, your father promised to take you camping, but work kept interfering with the trip, and you handled it without getting upset. If you think about patient for a minute, I'm sure everybody in here could think about something in their day, possibly even today, that required a bit of patience to deal with. I know when I get something to eat sometimes, and there's a line. Sometimes you have to wait a while in that line to get your food. Well, it does require a bit of patience. I know sometimes somebody may come up and talk to you and asking you things that possibly you don't see the reason to answer them at the moment or whatever, but they might be a little bit bothersome, if you will. But if you put patience to work in your life, you can actually listen to the person and be respectful and kind to them, and excuse yourself if you have to, whatever the case may be. You got to be patient with people, demonstrating that self-control, remaining calm, and also through setbacks too. Which this was a setback when the father had promised to take the young man camping, but work kept interfering. So he handled it without getting upset. That was a setback. Bearing or enduring pain, difficulty, provocation, annoyance with calmness. That's another definition out of the American Heritage. Bearing or enduring pain, difficulty, provocation, annoyance with calmness. It's even been said, you're suffering, if you will, being patient and suffering with that. Number 4, honest and trustworthy. Being fair, sincere, and straightforward. For example, you were playing in the house and mistakenly broke your mother's new vase. No one saw you break it, but you told her the truth anyway. So, consider that. How many times does something take place in our lives that is kind of catastrophic like that, I guess you could say? Broke mom's new vase, knowing she wasn't going to be pleased. That was pretty bad, but of course coughing it up and telling the truth anyway. Well, how many times in our daily work life and so forth do things take place that the best thing to do would be to go to our supervisor and tell them, I got to tell you this, and you just tell them what occurred. instead of letting it go and it being found out later. You know, what occurs then is that you find out later and you're considered the opposite of honest and trustworthy. You're considered dishonest and not able for anyone to put any trust in because you're not actually keeping your supervisor abreast of what's going on. And you can actually put that to work in all aspects of your life, not just your work life. Number 5, being humble, not proud or arrogant. Now this is interesting right here. A humble person will not argue, will not dispute, nor disobey set rules. Will not argue, dispute, or disobey set rules. Now, we have a great opportunity to show how humble we are in accepting a rule that a lot of people really don't like here recently. Think about the face masks. All over the world, all over this nation, all over this state, here in the Peaceful Solution class, and all around our headquarters here where we teach. We wear masks. We practice social distancing. We do these things. Now, not everybody likes it. It's not always comfortable. But you'll find that that you can show yourself as being humble when you have your mask on. And I say that to my own admonition too. Sometimes it's, I don't forget as much as I used to because, of course, everybody's wearing masks. And we've gotten very used to wearing the masks now. So don't get in a hurry and forget it. Make sure you grab your mask, okay? Anyway, it says, for example, the bathroom rule is clean up after yourself when you use the bathroom. You don't like to clean the bathroom, but you obey without complaining. You get in there and do it. It was a job you were given to do. You don't like to clean the bathroom, or you don't like to clean the kitchen, or you don't like to clean the car. You don't like to clean the yard. I mean, put something in there. You don't like to clean your room. But when you're assigned those things, you can be humble. Don't be proud. Don't be arrogant. Don't complain. And don't, of course, be respectful and don't talk back and so forth. You just follow the instructions. Now, a lot of these things, these character traits that we're looking at, the positive character traits, go hand in hand with being thankful. Look at number 6. Goes hand in hand with being thankful. Being thankful is to be conscious of the benefits that you have received. Think of that for a minute, the benefits. To be conscious of the benefits that you have received. Thankful people find joy in what they have, instead of worrying or being upset about what they don't have. For example, George really wanted a brand name pair of shoes. However, his mother could not afford them. She did, however, buy him the best shoes that she could afford. George told his mother, "Thank you." Even though he didn't get the pair he wanted, he appreciated the shoes that he got. So that's something to keep in mind, being thankful. It might not be the exact thing that you wanted, but yet, if you can get the job done, there it is. I mean, be thankful for the things that you have. That keeps us from getting caught up in wanting to get other people's possessions. It keeps us helps keep us safe from stealing, not touching someone else's belongings without permission. Some people have fallen into that merely by not being thankful and not respecting other people's property, not being honest, and those things go together, and they end up stealing someone's property. And remember, it's not just taking the item and not giving it back, it's also using the item without permission. And all these things come into place with that. So be thankful. Okay, let's look at number 7. Now, number 7 is forgiving. It's been said, let's continue on for a minute, to refrain from holding anger or resentment towards someone who has wronged you, or even someone perceived to have wronged you. And it's been said that that holding on to anger and resentment towards somebody is like drinking a glass of poison and waiting for the other person to die. I mean, it's that ridiculous, really. It does harm to you. For example, your classmate laughed at you when you tripped, and rather than get upset with him or her, you try to get even, you forgive her and laugh with her. Now, that's quite different than yelling at them, hey, why did you do that, stupid, or something of that nature, being negative. So being positive in your forgiving, to refrain from holding on to anger or resentment towards someone who has wronged you. And remember that part also, or someone perceived to have wronged you. Because sometimes we think that someone has wronged us, and it might not be so. We might have not been educated, going back to the first thing we talked about. We might not have been educated and gotten all the facts and making sure they're correct. We might have jumped to a conclusion and therefore thinking somebody has wronged us. So see how everything goes hand in hand? The Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is synergistic. It all works together. You can't just take one part of it and say, hey, I've got great moral character now. It's just like one of the previous teachers was talking about going into some schools and having presentations and classes. And, one of the things that sometimes the schools want is they want to focus on one area. Like, oh, yeah, we need to focus on respect. Or, oh, self-control. We like that. Let's do that book right there. But the problem is the foundation hasn't been laid yet. And the foundation starts with knowing what character is and knowing the difference between what positive and negative character is. And that's why we're going through these tonight, and we'll continue even going through the negative traits a bit later. Okay, let's look at number 8. Being steadfast and persistent. You are determined not to give up or change what you have set out to accomplish. And now let's look at this example, then I've got something to say about it. But for example, Martha was determined to stop assisting Alicia in stealing school supplies at the mall. Martha had already explained to Alicia that stealing was wrong. So when Alicia came to pick Martha up, she said no and encouraged Alicia not to go also. So you are determined not to give up or change what you have set out to accomplish. Now you see where Martha was determined to stop helping Alicia steal, and it looked like, we don't know the rest of the story, if Alicia didn't go or not, but, she's stealing. She was determined to go and steal again, it looks like, and then Martha said, no, I'm not going, and encouraged her not to go either. So it'd be interesting to know the rest of the story, whether she did or not. But being steadfast and persistent, being determined to not give up or change what you set out to accomplish as long as it's positive. If you set out to accomplish something negative and someone like Martha encourages you not to, and then you don't go and do that negative thing, well then that's okay. Now you're being steadfast and persistent in doing something right, not something that's wrong. Self-control. Let's look at number 9. Now, self-control is not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions, not jumping to conclusions. For example, you saw your sister's letter on her dresser and really wanted to read it, but because you chose to respect her privacy, you decided not to touch it. You really wanted to read it. But because you chose to respect her privacy, you decided not to touch it, and you decided not to steal, and you decided not to get messed up in everything else we've been talking about, by going against all the positive character here. You did not yield. Self-control. Self-control is stopping and thinking about what option to take next. What would be the proper thing to do? And then proceeding with the right choice. You want to always stop and think about things, and that's what this person did right here. They saw the letter on the dresser, they wanted to read it, but quickly changed their mind, chose to respect, show respect, chose to be honest and trustworthy, and that's what we want to always try to do, is practice self-control. You know, self-control sometimes requires that, I would say all the time requires that you do have the facts, you've made sure they're correct, you've made sure that you're showing respect to yourself and others, you know, by practicing self-control. You're being patient because you stopped what you initially wanted to do, that knee-jerk reaction type thing. And you're being honest and trustworthy also in showing that you can practice self-control. You're also being humble. You know it's wrong to look at the letter on the dresser or whatever the case may be. And you're being thankful for what you have. And you're being steadfast and persistent in keeping your positive character too, by practicing the self-control. So how many of these character traits do you recognize in yourself? How many do you recognize in your family members and friends? When you possess these traits, you can feel positive about yourself and your ability to interact with others in a meaningful and caring way. In like manner, when people around you exhibit these same positive character traits and treat you accordingly, you feel appreciated and respected. In essence, this is the peaceful solution. By simply interacting and communicating using these positive character traits, we can avoid hurting and devaluing others. Now, if you find that you're lacking in any of these positive character traits, then work hard to develop them. And remember what the word develop means, you know, to actually aid in the growth of, to put some effort into it, to grow, to build. You can develop that character trait by first valuing it as important, and begin by evaluating why that character trait is important to you as an individual and how it can benefit yourself and others. And so what I'm going to do right now is we have another teacher that's here and ready to go, it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you, David. Continuing forward with these positive character traits and remembering that the character that we're building, and it's always important that we see that as teachers in our minds, because we're placing that in our students and we're forming our students. And remember, it's like David here, he talked about respect and self-respect. A teacher must first do these things for themselves and establish these things firmly in their own minds before they can take these and establish these in the minds of their students. And it's very important to take all of these things, as you see where we're listing. Notice it says to list them about yourself here on page 15. David read this. How many of these character traits do you recognize in yourself? Whenever you're teaching a class, have them write this down. This is a question that's being asked to the students. It's not something that you just want to read and move along. It's a question to get them to think, to get them to consider exactly what is being said here. Because remember, we're building, and we have to continually work toward building. If we're not building, we're tearing down. It's never just staying the same and no movement. We're either building or tearing down at all times, with every decision we make, with everything that we do, with every activity we allow within our lives. We're either building or tearing down. So very important, get that in the minds of the students. And it's important that they see this. And you're doing this by having them write things down, such as these things. And notice it also said, how many do you recognize in your family members and friends? And we're talking about positive things. It didn't say write down the negative things you see in your family members and friends. We're talking about the positive side of character at this point. And it's very important to keep everything positive, because you have to understand the positive and the benefits of it. And that helps you to look at the negative in a little different way, because all of us have negativity in our lives. We have negativity in our character, and we're trying to alleviate that. We're trying to push it out. And as some teachers said a couple weeks ago, this isn't an overnight process, but it's something we must work toward doing. So continuing on here in the last paragraph on this page, it says, if you're lacking in any of these positive character traits, then work hard to develop them. And of course, we only read 9. That's not all of them, but that's 9. When you get into the high school unit, there's 21 that are listed. And we're building foundationally here, so we're getting these 9 firmly established in the mind. They're very important, and they're very significant to solidify one's decision-making in character education. So once again, if you find that you're lacking in any of these positive character traits, then notice, work hard to develop them. Work hard to develop. We have to create these things, and we're going to get into something here just in a few moments that society thinks we're born with these things. You should be born to do this. Well, you have to develop when you're in the mother's womb, your fingers, your eyes, your ears, your nose. Once you're born, you have to develop the ability to walk, to talk, and to run, to ride a bicycle. You have to have all of these things. So why is it that society doesn't see the necessity to develop positive decision-making or right decision-making? Well, once again, that's what we're trying to get into students' minds. If you're not making positive decisions, many times, and people may think that, this can't be true. Many times it's someone just doesn't know how. They're just they don't even know to look for it. They don't even know what to recognize to, well, if I need to make a change, how do I make a change? It's easy to look at someone and say, don't do that. You might want to consider, we might want to consider, have they ever been shown how not to do that? Just telling someone not to do something is not enough. Showing them how to not do it, that is the important part. And that's the development, to develop, to build, to nurture, to mold, so to speak. So you can develop a character trait by first valuing it as important. And remember, right page 6 there, by where it says first valuing, because remember on page 6, that's where we got the definition of values, and it means values are what you believe in or feel strongly about, and they play a key role in the development of our character. And it's important that we teach, when we're teaching these things, it's not just a rule, but this is why this rule is important. And this is how you benefit from the keeping of this rule. Now, begin by evaluating why the character trait is important to you as an individual and how it can benefit you and others. Because something that benefits you benefits society. If you're doing something that's positive for you, it's positive for your classroom. And that's why implementing this program, when we started out with purpose and objectives, is how we moderate and determine how successful we're being is by the behavioral changes in the classroom. Well, that's how these things are actually implemented, and that's what we're seeing here once again, being reinstated into the mind of the students by the teacher, that we're building something, and this is a daily process, and everyone can benefit from this. Now, it goes on to say, for example, let's say you need to develop the character trait of being thankful. Has anyone here ever received something from somebody and someone goes, okay, what do you say? And some people are like, bye. You're supposed to say you're thankful. Thank you for that. Well, this is the thing that we have to realize about being thankful. Is being thankful always someone patting you on the back and telling you great job? Whenever you really mess up and someone comes to you and points out what you did that was wrong, that's also a time that we need to be thankful, where we need to be appreciative of that person that points out something that we might have done that was wrong, that could bring us harm eventually. And that's what a role of a teacher is to point these things out. But notice, even being thankful is something that we can't just expect students to do. They have to be trained and nurtured and shown how to do these things. Well, the first step is to consider why you should be thankful. So remember, positive character traits you benefit from. And that's what we're trying to get into the mind continually of a student, and also us ourselves. We're not beyond these things, that's for sure. They're very easily to forget for adults. So for children, we need to be much more mindful of this. And this program, of course, as we said, is for adults and children. But we're trying to establish these in the mind. And we're taking these steps, and they're small steps, not leaps and bounds, small steps. The first step is to consider why you should be thankful. Being thankful means you can appreciate what you have. And think about this next sentence here and consider how this affects us in today's society. It says, people who are not thankful often feel dissatisfied with what they have and become envious of others. So they see everything else everybody has, and they become envious of others. Well, let's continue, because there's some things that we should all be very thankful for. It says next, list all the things you have to be thankful for. So instead of being envious of others, you have your students, list things you should be thankful for. And you'll find there's some things that we all just go throughout the day, and we just assume that we have the right to that, and, well, why should I be thankful for that? You're not thankful for healthy teeth until you have a toothache. And then, boy, you had healthy teeth. You're not thankful for a back that doesn't hurt until you have a pinched nerve or something hurts your back. And then you were very thankful for that. There's many other things that health in general, and let's read a little bit more and we'll get into this. It says, do not forget to include things such as food, clothing, a place to live, your health, and so on. Your health. Think of today's society and climate with what's going on in today's society. COVID-19 has kind of taken over the news, but there's still people dying from heart disease and cancer and other, many other diseases that arrive from a lot of these things from negative choices that were made early on in life that were preventable, but not so. There's even countries such as Japan that are having their leading cause of death is suicide because of mental breakdown. They're calling it pandemic fatigue. And when you think of these things, when you can see the positive, don't ever take that for granted, because sometimes we all have to work to see the positive. Don't get me wrong. We can all see negative. But sometimes keeping that focus can be a challenge. And when we can keep that focus going, that helps others keep the focus going. So always remember, if you're not thankful, be careful who you talk to. You could be talking to someone that is really having a problem with not being thankful. And instead of helping this person, you could be just adding on to the pressure going on in their mind, to the challenges they're facing, because, they're trying to be thankful too. And always keep that in mind, because when and I'll give you an example. A young friend of mine who's 15 years of age, he lives in Lagos, Nigeria. He texted me last week, and he said, I want to tell you something. I said, okay. He goes, I'm going to impress you. I said, okay, impress me. I can't wait to see this. He said, in Nigeria, if I save 1 naira a day, in 1 year, 3.5 months, I will have saved $1. And I thought for a minute, and I said, well, let me tell you what it's like to live in America. If you save for another year, 3.5 months, so 2 years and 6 months, you can buy a bottle of water at the store. And he asked me, he goes, why does anyone buy water? It's free. Not in America, it's not. And you could see he was like, why would anyone do that? Well, we're very thankful that we have water, but people will readily just go buy water. When that first came out back in the 90s, it was an idea. People were like, no one will buy water. It's one of the biggest selling things in stores today, water, bottled water. But you think about, he was very thankful I get water for free. But he was showing how the difference of life, how different life can be. Imagine if you're working all day long and your pay is $4.80 a day, US dollars. Could you manage that? There's people that live less than 4 hours from here that live on $4.80 a day. So think about what we have to be thankful for in our own lives, because if you had to do it, you would find a way to do it. And you could find a way to do it honestly, but be thankful if you don't have to do it. Be thankful if you have food that's in front of you, if you have warm clothes when it's cold, and you have these things to put on yourself, because in doing that, you're showing others that you're thankful and you're helping them to see it. For example, if I was a young man and I'm playing outside during school, am I being thankful if I take my brand new jacket and throw it on the ground and go running and playing, and then I come in and the teacher goes, where's your jacket? Is that showing the character trait of being thankful? No. So consider everything we do, because how you take care of your belongings also shows whether you're thankful. If someone gives you food and you just throw it away, is that being thankful? No. If you get clothes and you pull on them and you tear on them and you mark on them. Is that being thankful? No, it's not. So always be thankful, especially our health. Be thankful, especially if you've been trained from a young age on how to live a healthy life, because not everyone is trained that way. Be very thankful for these things. So continuing on here, it says, often these things are taken for granted and we forget to be thankful for them. We just expect it. And that leads to negative character. Whenever we just expect things to go right, and that's what we must get in the minds of our students. You just can't expect things to go right. Remember, we said it's hard work. You have to participate. I have to participate. We all have to participate in making this work. Very important that that gets put over into the minds of the students. It's hard work. It's not easy. Continuing on, it says, then make another list of how being thankful can affect the people you interact with every day. In a classroom, you would have the school or the classroom. You could have your neighborhood, society in general, whether it be your state, your country, or even all of us that have to live together on this earth. Everybody's decisions affects the other person more than we think when we just kind of generalize it. They truly affect the other person. So have them make that list, and once again, this is individualized. This doesn't mean, don't do this where the students think they're going to have to get up and read this in front of the classroom. Remember what we said when we started, you could have 30 students, they come from 30 different avenues of life. They see things 30 different ways, and there may be things where you have someone that's thankful for something that they really don't want to share, because that would be telling other people, well, I don't have what you have. I'm actually lacking something. So to go over it with your student as a teacher would be one thing, but be careful. You can always ask for volunteers to present their things, but always be careful of how these things are done. If a person voluntarily wants to do these things, that's fine, but never put someone on the spot. What someone may be thankful for could get them ridiculed later on in life by people who truly don't know what it means to be thankful because they just have it in their life. So a thankful person is a bright and optimistic person. In other words, you know, the old saying, you see the glass half full instead of half empty. He or she encourages and motivates others to be thankful. They don't drag them down. They don't drag them down with criticism as, food's too cold, food's too hot, ice is too cold, coffee's too hot. And I've heard people say that, that coffee's too hot. And then they come back an hour later, it's too cold now. Well, be thankful you had it, because you had to have it to be one or the other, and I'm not for sure if it's too hot or too cold, then that kind of depends upon the person that's drinking it to control that, isn't it? So be careful what we say and the negativity that we feed across. Even as teachers, be very careful of how we talk to the students about the things that they have. Someone might come with a jacket that has a hole. Why would you wear a jacket like that? They're thankful that's the only jacket they have. So always be mindful of these things. So continuing on, it says, you can use these steps to develop any character trait that you're lacking. So this is any character trait can be done just in the same way we talked about being thankful. Any character trait can be developed through practice, through hard work. Developing positive character traits takes commitment. It's something you have to commit yourself to in dedication and determination. Changing yourself from the inside is not always easy, but it's well worth the effort. Think about the things people do to change the outside. Think about these drastic dieting measures people will go on just to change how they look on the outside. Makes me feel better about myself, is what a lot of people say. Well, it's really, a lot of people confuse with the problems that are on the inside. They confuse them with how they look on the outside and what other people think of them. And we'll get into that here in a moment. But always make sure that your students understand you're who you are. You're the person you're supposed to be as far as your makeup. And remember the fixed character traits we went over. You're who you are. Now, what you make of your life is all up to you. You're in the driver's seat. Be thankful for the things you have and change the things that you don't like. If there's something negative, something that you're suffering from, something not going that's benefiting yourself, then change it. But don't expect it to take place overnight. It's something that we have to work on, and it's very hard work. So continuing on here, looking over to page 17, and remember we're building up a contrast, and of course the contrast will take place when we get to the negative side of character. We're still building on the positive side of character. And it says, let's take a closer look at two positive character traits, honesty and responsibility. Now once again, we're on page 17. Now honesty, that's one of the positive sides of character there, and if you remember, that was number 4 that David had read here earlier. And it's honest and trustworthy. Back on page 14, I'll read you the definition again. And it says, being fair, sincere, and straightforward. Fair, sincere, and straightforward. So does that mean if someone says, does this shirt look ugly on me? It sure does. Is that the smartest thing to do? No. It's not. And we'll get into, and of course, well, let's just leave it at that. But being straightforward doesn't mean insulting someone. Think of the positive. Remember, positive character, positive choices do not harm yourself, someone else, or the environment. And if someone has asked you an honest question, give them an honest answer, but be meticulous, be compassionate how you answer the question. But notice here, honesty. Someone who is honest is going to be trusted to tell the truth, even when they do something wrong. Now, this is a point where you need to implement in the minds of your students. If you want to build a positive reputation, being honest is one of the quickest and most reliable ways you can build a great reputation, a positive reputation. Someone who is honest, people remember that person. Someone who is dishonest, people remember them twice as much. When you're doing business in the world, when you go out to places and different businesses in your community, would you go back to the same place that did you wrong? No, of course you go to the place you think that did you right, treated you fairly. Well, we can kind of look at ourselves as a business. Even though we're not a business, we're still a person that someone will come to or totally disassociate with because of the way we interact. Well, being honest here, it says sometimes other people, even your friends, can pressure you to do something that is dishonest. Now, that's influences, and we'll get into that, and we're also starting to introduce peer pressure, positive and negative peer pressure to the classroom, but notice it's being done very gradually. And don't get carried away and to start breaking down peer pressure at this point, because we're going to cover that later on in the book. Also, influences. So just briefly read over it and talk about these influences that are being used and this pressure, pressure. And you can even grab something and show them how pressure, we like to blow balloons up sometimes in a classroom and show how the pressure can cause it to burst. Well, that's what someone does. When someone bursts, that's when they make a really, really, really bad choice. But throw the balloon pieces and say, okay, now put it back together so we can blow it back up. We'll use aluminum foil, a sheet of aluminum foil, and tell them to wrap it tightly, and then, okay, now get all the wrinkles back out of it. It's not possible. So this honesty that we're telling them about, this peer pressure, when you give in to peer pressure, negative peer pressure, it can affect your reputation for a lifetime. But notice a friend who truly cares about you, this is a friend who truly cares, however, will encourage you to make an honest choice. So this friend obviously has self-respect. As David said, that you learn to value and respect yourself first. This friend would have self-respect because not only is he respecting himself, he's respecting you as a friend. He's encouraging you to make an honest choice. For example, a true friend would encourage you not to cheat on a test or steal something from a store. A true friend would always be honest with you. And that's what the honest friend is doing, is talking about positive choices and making positive choices. A true friend would, man, I don't have any money to get that. Why don't we just take it? No, it's better to do without than to steal. And even a thief doesn't like to be stolen from. That's one thing you learn when you go teach in the prison systems. Even a thief does not like to be stolen from. Not that you have to go that far, but they readily tell you they don't like to be stolen from. And I remember one gentleman saying, it's ironic, I can't stand to be stolen from. But I'm in here for stealing. But I can't stand to be stolen from. And that always stuck in my mind. That never left my mind that, wow, that's amazing. He's doing time in prison for stealing, but he himself cannot stand to be stolen from. So it showed that he'd never been taught the value of certain things. He knows he doesn't like it, but he doesn't see how it affects others when he does it. Well, this is what we're getting over into the minds with this honesty, this self-respect, and how honesty could even eliminate war in the classrooms, in the communities, also amongst nations. When you are honest, you will be trusted, and you can avoid conflicts with others. And that's very important. When honesty is used, conflicts can be avoided. Your example will help others to make honest choices. When your friends see you admit to something, even if you did something wrong, you admit to it. You tell the authority that you did it. And this is something that, get into the mind of your students. Sometimes your students, as a teacher, every student in the classroom will know they did something wrong, but the authority never knows. Encourage them. If you can tell everybody you didn't need to tell, surely you can tell the authority that you should have told. And that's important because you're teaching them to build that honest reputation and showing them how it benefits the environment. So your example will help others make honest choices. You will be honest with the possession of others too, always remembering to ask permission before touching, using, borrowing, or taking something that belongs to them. And that's also, as the previous teacher mentioned, when you take something without asking, that's stealing. It's not borrowing. If I go out to the parking lot and I see keys in a car and I decide, I think I'll borrow that car. No, that's stealing. The person that owns the car is going to go outside, see that it's gone, report to the police, hey, my car is gone. And when the police pull me over, I cannot look at them and go, I just borrowed it. No, that's stealing. So think about that. We think about that on large scales, but that goes all the way down to whether it be a pencil, a pen, an eraser. No matter what it is, we should always look at an item. Before we touch an item, the first thing we should ask ourselves, who is the owner of this item? And if you cannot answer that you are the owner of the item, then you need to realize, before I can touch this, use this, or even consider the possibility of picking it up, I must go to the owner and ask first. Now, you might think that, well, that seems drastic. How drastic is it when someone takes your belongings as a teacher or as another student and they don't do those things? Well, it becomes important to you that someone would have asked. Well, always look at it with that intention, and that will help build a positive environment in the classroom. It says, when you are known as an honest person who will not be persuaded to do something that brings harm to yourself or others, people will trust you with more responsibility. And that's what comes the older we get. Really, young people want these things. They want responsibility. And the challenge between adults and youth is the adults are trying to determine, well, have you really molded into someone that can be responsible? And of course, the youth is like, oh yeah, I'm responsible. Absolutely. You give me a car, I'll put gas in it. No problem. Well, what about the car payment, the insurance? And then, of course, you get speeding tickets or you hit somebody. Who's responsible? Oh, it couldn't have been my fault. And I'm telling you what I went through in my life there, kind of, sort of. We have to learn that really the merger between adulthood and teenagehood is really just determining if the person is responsible enough and understands what's going on in society enough. And as adults, we have to look back. As a teacher, if you look at your classroom and you think you're not responsible enough to fulfill these obligations, the first thing we must do as a teacher is, have I given them the tools that they needed to develop these character traits? Have I explained and led them in the way to where they can be responsible? Because everybody wants to get older until you're older. Then everybody wants to get younger. But everybody, they crave more responsibility. I want to work. I want to drive. I want to buy a house. I want to do this. I want to do that. But being educated and knowing the effects that come with it is the most important part. If I want to buy a truck, I want one of those big trucks like everybody else drives. How much is it? Oh, it's $1,200 a month. Oh, well, I can do that. I can work 3 jobs and I can make $1,200 a month. What about your insurance? Oh, I'll get another job. Yeah, I'll work that too. Who's going to buy your gas? Oh, I can't afford all that. And you think, well, how does everybody do this? Consider that if a parent tries to lead you or a teacher tries to lead you in a way that you know you want it, but it's not best you get it right now, take your time, work for it, save for it, build for it, then acquire it. But we live in a society that wants everything now. In fact, I wanted it yesterday. Just now I'm complaining about it. Whenever we can put in the minds of our students this hard work, remember, it takes time. It has to be developed. These character traits have to be developed. And you can compare these things to other items that they can kind of connect with. 15, 16-year-olds' cars immediately. You show them how hard work, even character traits, but these things you want, hard work. No, you don't really have to pay $1,200 for a truck if you want one. You can go another route. It's a road less traveled. It's not the quickest road, but you can accomplish what you want. It's just not instantaneously. It takes patience, and that's the way positive character comes. It's not instantaneously. It's a slow building process that will come to fruition, completion. The benefit can be seen if we put effort towards doing it. Well, with being responsible, it says being responsible is another trait you should want to make part of your character, and that's all of us. Being responsible means to be accountable and answerable for your actions, whether they're right or wrong. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody makes bad choices, whether they're intentional or unintentional. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And being responsible, a person will readily admit to these things. It says, you will know a reliable person, someone others can count on. Someone who is irresponsible is unreliable. For example, such a person is always late when you plan to meet them, or they might not even show up at all. That can be very frustrating, especially if you drive a distance to meet someone and they're a no-show. When they say they will return something they borrow, they might return it damaged or in worse condition than when you lent it, and usually they are late returning it to you if they somehow don't lose it along the way. Now, consider this in your mind. If I asked one of you, think of this in your mind, to borrow something for a week, and at the end of the week I don't return it, is it borrowing from that point on, or is it stealing? It's stealing. So if you make an agreement to borrow something, and you say for a week, that week, if it's agreed upon, that week is okay. It's borrowed. You have to maintain it. But from that point on, from the time you agreed, if it's not returned, it's stealing. And it's important. These seem like small things, but it's important that this get really implanted into the minds of the students. So this building process, remember, you're trying to provoke thoughts in their minds. You're trying to draw pictures in their minds. And you're trying to get them to see the downside of not doing things the proper way. Continuing on here, it says, this can leave you feeling frustrated or hesitant to ask the person to do something for you again or to loan them anything. Responsible people are given more important duties because they know they can be counted on to do the job. And remember, responsibility, you got to be honest. That's part of being responsible, is having honesty. It says they also receive more privileges. Now, privileges doesn't mean you come from a higher class of society. You have nicer this, or I like you better. Privileges are if you have shown that you will do this, and you have shown you will do that, and I can count on you, so therefore I will let you do this, this, and this. It's not a privilege of where you were born with the privilege. It's a privilege that comes through hard work, through development of showing that you will make the right choice. So they also receive more privileges, responsibilities. That's a great way to tie those in. Those privileges are more responsibilities. For instance, if you are responsible with your chores, you might be given permission to take on more jobs, allowing you to earn more money. Or because you are so responsible at babysitting your younger brother and sister, your parents might allow you to obtain something you have desired for a long time. And notice, you worked hard for it. You sought the road less traveled. You put forth the effort in bringing this to fruition. It says that these are just a few of many valuable moral principles that you have at your disposal. Strive to make them all a part of your moral character development. And remember, development. You're going to see that word development, as David said, to expand, to build, to strengthen. With every class that you give your students, always try to get them to see they're building upon this character. They're adding to it. They're strengthening it. They're making it stronger by adding more layers, solid layers, onto it that can't be easily broken. It says, remembering this, basing your decision on facts, not emotions. If you don't have that underline that, circle it, highlight it, put arrows toward it. That basing decisions on facts, not emotions, is important to building true moral character. Could you imagine if a political leader based his decision on his emotions of not liking another country and just went to war with them whether anybody else liked it or not? How does that benefit society? And then think about, how does that affect society? It affects everyone. Well, notice it says when you gather all of the facts, you're able to make a decision, a better decision, than when you only have a portion of the facts. So that's very important to think about and get into the minds of your students. And with the next class we're going to have, of course, we're going to learn to go over here to the negative side of character. But I want to leave you with this one thought before the comparison takes place, and it's the definition of integrity, because that's what we want to get into the minds of our students. And of course, integrity, as defined by the Peaceful Solution, is the end result of internalizing positive character traits that can be clearly seen in your actions and attitudes. Well, that's called integrity. And notice it says internalizing. Remember, you have to put these things into something before you can see the results of them. It's like if you want to make Kool-Aid and all you have is a jug of water, and the Kool-Aid sits on the shelf, and you never put the Kool-Aid in the water, do you ever get Kool-Aid? No, you never will. You can drink that water all you want to, but it'll never be Kool-Aid. Well, these positive character traits, when we start putting them into the minds of our students and also ourselves, then and only then can we start expecting to see a difference, and will society really and truly start to benefit from that. So the next class we'll have is going to be this coming Sunday. I don't remember the date. This coming Sunday, it'll be at 5:30. And the teachers that will address will start off with what is a negative character. And remember, put down in your notes that this is a contrast. We're going to show a contrast between the benefits and then the downsides of what negative character can truly bring. Thank you for coming once again to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Certification class.